What's up guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be doing a comparison between the Xbox Series X and the PS5 in 2022. We're going to be going over the games, the UI, the controller, and so much more. And then I'll be giving you my opinion on each of those categories. So hopefully this will help you decide which console to get if you don't have one already, the Xbox Series X or the PS5. So without any further ado, let's get started. So first up, we're going to be talking about the Xbox Series X controller. I'm going to give you the good stuff first and then the bad stuff.
First up, I love the placement of the sticks. Xbox have been doing this since the very beginning, and I'm glad they're sticking with it. No matter what game you'll play, your thumbs will never be touching. Another thing that I like are the grips on the back of the controller and on the triggers. If you watch my unboxing video, you'll see at first I was not a big fan about these grips because it felt like sandpaper, especially when you're rubbing your hands all up on the controller. But grips are meant for your hands not to be sliding, and it does a great job, so it doesn't really feel like sandpaper when you're holding the controller. I also like the rumble feature within the triggers. It's a really nice feature and an added step of immersion, but only some games utilize this. Unfortunately, this is where the good compliments end. I absolutely hate that Xbox still uses AA batteries for the controller. Yes, you do have an option of buying a battery pack, but this should be standard. We are 2022, okay? We should be having rechargeable batteries within our controller. It's just that simple. I also hate how noisy this controller is. Every button clicks, no matter what, whether it's the D-pad, whether it's the face buttons, it's just so loud and obnoxious. Now, there will be some people who actually enjoy that, but my personal taste, I just hate it. I will admit, for the most part, I am gaming with headphones on, so I'm not going to be hearing this clicking noise as much, but when I plug my headphones into the controller, I sometimes get this static noise for no reason. There is a workaround, but there shouldn't have to be a workaround. If I plug my headphones into the controller, it should just work. Simple as that.
Now let's talk about the PS5 controller. Again, I'm going to give you the good stuff first and then the bad.
First off, I love how it feels in my hand. The curvature and the weight of the controller is perfect. It's probably my most favorite controller to date, right next to the GameCube controller. The buttons also feel great. Each one is relatively silent, which is a huge bonus in my opinion because I hate clicky buttons. Sony most likely did this on purpose because of the next feature that is with the DualSense, and that is there's a mic within the DualSense. Obviously, it's much better to have an actual headset with a good mic, but if you don't have a mic and you don't have a headset and you just want to talk to your friends real quick, you do have that option built into the DualSense. Now, the reason why Sony has called this controller the DualSense is because of the haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers, and the 3D audio that it possesses. The adaptive triggers apply resistance. So for example, let's say you're playing a video game and your character has a bow. When you draw that bow back, the triggers will apply resistance to make it feel as if you're drawing a bow back. As for the haptic feedback, let's say you're running on sand, the controller will make it feel like you're running on sand. If you're running on pavement, it'll also try to mimic that feeling. And finally, the 3D audio. Let's say you hear a blast from the right side of your ear that's far away. It'll make it seem as if that blast is actually far away. These are just a few examples, but of course the game has to support these features. If it doesn't support haptic feedback, adaptive triggers, or 3D audio, the DualSense is just another ordinary controller. Now, the main thing that I absolutely hate about this controller is that it's white. We're gamers, our hands get clammy, we sweat, and over time, this white controller is going to be a dirty brown. I also don't really like the touchpad. It feels more like a gimmick than it has an actual use. As for the sticks, there isn't really much to say. They just function as sticks and that's it. One thing to note are the adaptive triggers can break. I was playing zombies with the boys one night and my R2 button just snapped. You can return it to Sony and get a new one for free, but this shouldn't be happening. This seems more like a quality issue on Sony's part. So which controller do I prefer the most? The DualSense or the Xbox Series X controller? I'm gonna have to give it to the PS5 controller. The amount of features that it has is just amazing. The haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers, the 3D audio. These features are truly game-changing if utilized properly.
So now let's move on to the consoles. I'm going to start with the PS5 first.
I love the look of this console. It really stands out and it commands your attention. But I also have a problem with the design of the console, which I will tell you in just a bit. It seems like Sony designed the PS5 mainly to address the issues that the PS4 had, which was it overheated way too fast and was extremely loud. So what they did was they added a ton of vents, they added a huge fan, and they made the console itself big. This allows for good air circulation. Additionally, they added liquid metal, which allows the console to stay at a nice cool temperature. On either side of the console, there are white shells that come off, which easily allows you to clean up any dust buildup. Now that the shell is off, you can access the SSD expanded storage slot. Other than that, in the front of the console we have a USB port and a USB-C port, which I'm a huge fan of because this is the direction that the future is going into. We're going to be having wires that go from USB-C to USB-C. In the back we have another couple of USB ports, Ethernet port, power port, and the HDMI 2.1. The secret sauce that the PS5 has is within its SSD. Sony put all their eggs in one basket and created a custom SSD. So what does this really mean? Well, the loading times are much quicker, the quality of assets being streamed are much higher, and the amount of assets being streamed are much more. So when you take a game like Horizon Forbidden West on both PS4 and PS5, you'll find that on PS5 the game loads much faster. You'll see that the trees, the grass, the water, the rocks are much more detailed, and the scene is much more dense than on PS4. Now my issue with this console is the black strip that is in the middle. It smudges way too easily, so your console just looks filthy if you touch it too much. Additionally, when the console launched, the SSD storage slot was inactive. They had to patch it in later. And to make things worse, Sony said that the PS5 will be able to do VRR, but it'll come via a patch. We're over a year later and we still did not receive this patch for VRR. I don't understand this practice. They did the same thing with their TVs. They said yes, this TV is able to do VRR, but it's gonna come via a patch. And that patch only came 2 years later. I don't understand this. This is a garbage practice. This is not acceptable. Xbox day one was able to do VRR. Sony, why can't you? If anything, it feels like Sony just produced an unfinished product, which is not a good look. Remember when I said I love the design of this console, but it also kind of works against it? Well, the reason for that is because it's so big, it's so massive. If you have a TV unit like mine, then you'll see that it barely fits and it just doesn't look good there. It only looks good if you have something like a floating shelf or floating TV unit, something that gives it enough space for it to shine. Lastly, let's talk about the UI. I love the UI on the PS5. It's very simple and it's very striking. If you were to hover over one of the games, you'll get the artwork for that game. Because of this simplicity, it's very easy to navigate and it's kind of hard to get lost. At the top left, you have 2 tabs, one for games and one for your media. So things such as Netflix, Disney+, Funimation, any kind of those apps will be there. And under games, obviously you'll have your games, you'll be able to go to the PlayStation Store. Then at the top right, you could go to your settings and your profile. Lastly, there's this quick menu. It does the job, but I wish it was a bit more customizable. You can see things like your party, your friends, your profile, what you're downloading, and all sorts of notifications.
Next up is the Xbox Series X.
I am pleasantly surprised with the look of this console. It's much smaller than the PS5, it's much more compact, it's very minimalistic, and it looks good in any TV unit. The flashiest part about this console is at the top where the vents are, there's an underlying green tone. In the front we have 1 USB port, and in the back we have another 2, an SSD port, Ethernet port, HDMI 2.1, and power port. Unfortunately on this console there are no USB-C ports, and it is a magnet for fingerprints. The Xbox Series X also has an internal SSD, but it's not as fast as the PS5. Where it makes up for this is in its teraflops. This console on paper is the most powerful console to date with a whopping 12 teraflops of power. So what are the main advantages that Xbox Series X has over the PS5? Well, first off, quick resume. This feature is so sick. Essentially what it is let's say you're playing Halo and you want to play another game. You go click that other game, you play it for about a half hour, and then you want to go back to Halo. When you go back to Halo, you're going to pick up right where you left off. There's no restarting the application, there's no cold boot, it's right where you left off. Another thing is that it supports VRR. Of course, you need a display that also supports VRR, but this is really a game changer, and it's something that PS5 doesn't have at the moment, right? A nice little addition is that the Xbox Series X actually supports Dolby Vision gaming, which PlayStation does not have at all. Lastly, there's Game Pass, which is going to be a huge selling point for most people, but we'll get into that in the last category. So for the Series X's UI, I'm going to be honest with you guys, I don't have many good things to say about it. I think it's a cluttered mess. I feel like Xbox is trying to sell me something every time I open up this UI. I just feel like I'm being blasted with a whole bunch of ads. It's just not pretty to look at. So on the main page, you have some apps that you use the most, as well as some ads for some games, and below that, you'll have the games that you've downloaded. But it still feels like a mess. For example, you know when you're on PS5 and you hover over a game, you get that nice, beautiful artwork of the game. You do have the same thing on Xbox, but then there's a bunch of tabs covering it. As for the quick menu, I actually like it more than the PS5's, simply because of one reason. So I can avoid the main menu. Like I said, I'm not a fan of the UI, so this is my way of avoiding that. I can have everything that I want right here. I see the games that I've downloaded, I can access Game Pass, I can adjust the audio, see my friends, see notification, all of these things you can do within the quick menu and avoid using that mess of a main menu. So considering all these things, which do I prefer more, the PS5 or the Xbox? Honestly, it is a toss-up. I'm always going back and forth. I prefer the look of the PS5, but for the space that I have right now, the Xbox looks way better. I love the fact that PS5 has a USB-C port and the SSD is super fast, whereas on Xbox we have quick resume, VRR, and Dolby Vision gaming. For the UI, it's a clear win for me. PS5, you know, it's just very simple, clean, I know what I'm getting into, whereas on Xbox, it's just a cluttered mess. But in the grand scheme of things, all of this doesn't matter. What matters are the games. So let's start with Xbox. It has Game Pass, which includes over 100 different games for a monthly subscription fee. You could either directly download it to your console or stream it to your console, TV, PC, or even tablets. This includes third-party games such as Yakuza, Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy X, and so much more. On top of that, they also include first-party AAA games such as Halo Infinite and Forza. And just to sweeten the deal, Microsoft said that all of their first-party AAA games are going to be day and date on Game Pass. Another benefit with Game Pass is you'll be able to play online with your friends and you'll get games with gold. So when you think about it, this is actually an amazing deal, but keep in mind that this is a subscription service, so you will be paying monthly for it and you have to be connected to the internet. So if your internet goes down for whatever reason and the only games you have are with Game Pass, you won't be able to play them. So depending on your situation at home, Xbox might be the better console for you. Let's say if you have a family, you know, a few kids, they're gamers, you're a gamer. Right off the bat, you have over 100 games to play from. But again, keep in mind this is a subscription fee. These games are on rotation, meaning that they'll remove a few every month and add a few. So if you're playing a game and that game is going to be removed in the next couple of weeks, it's just gone. You can't play it anymore. You don't own any of these games, which is one of the major downfalls of this. Now, when it comes to exclusive games, Xbox has been in a major drought, especially last generation. But this time around, they have been making major moves. Recently, they've bought Bethesda and Activision Blizzard. So what does this really mean? Well, games such as Doom, Dishonored, Fallout, Skyrim, Call of Duty, all of these games are going to be now exclusive to Xbox. The reason why this is so major is because these IPs were both on PlayStation and Xbox in the past, and now Microsoft has just stripped this away from Sony. Obviously, if Microsoft want to put these games on Sony's platform, they can, but they spent billions of dollars to make these games exclusive to Xbox, so it most likely won't happen, but time will tell. One thing to note is that many of these exclusives are shooters, so if you're not into shooting games, it might not be for you. But like I said, they've acquired many studios now, and their library is going to be expanding as well as their genre of games. A very cool feature that Microsoft has implemented is its backwards compatibility program as well as its smart delivery. So let's say you own a physical disc from either the original Xbox, Xbox 360, or Xbox One, you're able to pop that disc in and the Series X will read it. If that game has been optimized for the Series X, it will play that version, which usually includes either a resolution bump or a frame rate bump at no extra cost. Now let's switch over to Sony. They have built a reputation around their story-driven AAA first-party games such as God of War, Horizon, Returnal, Ratchet & Clank, and so many more. They also love making deals with third-party and indie developers by making their games timed exclusive or permanently exclusive. A couple of games that come to mind are Final Fantasy 16 and Sifu. Remember when I said on paper the Series X is the most powerful console to date? Well, when it comes to third-party games, the majority of the time they perform better on the PS5 due to the SSD. If you want to play online with your friends, you have to subscribe to PlayStation Plus, which also includes a few games that you can download every month and keep in your library. One thing to note is when your subscription ends, those games become locked and you can't play them anymore. The closest thing that Sony has to Game Pass is PlayStation Now, which to be honest is a joke of a service. The games on there are not great, and for the majority of them you have to stream them rather than download them. There is a rumor that Sony is working on a Game Pass competitor, but only time will tell if this is actually any good. When it comes to backwards compatibility, PS5 can play all PS4 games, and some of those games have received bumps in frame rate, but it's a very short list. Some of the best games that came out on last generation can be found on the PlayStation Plus collection, which is a great way to catch up on any games you may have missed. If you want to play games from PS1, PS2, or PS3, the only way you could play them is through PlayStation Now. But like I said, it's a joke of a service and most games available are not even fun to play. Since we're transitioning from the PS4 to PS5 generation, many of these games will release on both consoles. But if you want to upgrade from PS4 to PS5, it's a hot mess compared to Xbox. You'll find that some games are free to upgrade, whereas others require a fee. Then there are others that require you to transfer your save file in a weird way. Like I said, it's overall a hot mess. On Xbox, you pop your disc in or you download the game and that's it. You have the latest version. So when it comes to games, which do I prefer, PlayStation 5 or Xbox? For me, in my opinion, it's PlayStation 5. I've been rocking with these games since way back in the day, so I have a connection with them. But don't sleep on Xbox this generation. They're making big moves. They're buying up companies, they're making games exclusive. It's definitely a console you want to keep your eye on this generation.
Alright guys, so the moment you've been waiting for. Which console do I prefer? The Xbox Series X or the PS5? And I'm gonna give it to the PS5. Overall, I believe it is the better console. Let's start from the design itself. I love how outgoing it is. It stands out on your entertainment unit, right? It captures the eye. Whereas the Xbox Series X, it's more sleek, it's more stealthy-like. And it's not a bad thing, right? It actually looks great in my entertainment unit compared to the PS5 for what I have hooked up right now. But again, the design of it, I just love how outgoing it is. When it comes to the controllers, right? I gave it to the PS5 yet again. Why? Just because the amount of features that it has. The haptic feedback, the adaptive triggers, the buttons are silent, right? The Xbox Series X buttons are so loud and it's just something I'm not into. That doesn't mean it's a bad controller, the Xbox Series X. I do love the shape of it. I love a lot of things about it. It's just overall, again, when we boil it down, which controller is better? PS5. Now, when it comes to games, it's going to come down to your personal preference and your situation at home, whether you have kids or not. For me, I don't have kids, and I love my single player games, so I'm going to go with PS5. It's got those great exclusives that you can't find anywhere else. But if you do have kids, Xbox Series X has Game Pass. You have over 100 games. It's just a great way to get into video games, right? There's so much variety on Xbox Series X, and you're just paying a subscription fee of $16 a month. That's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy this content, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you're always up to date with my videos, and I'll see you next time.